everywhere I've looked over the past year or so, I've seen this concept, be it in books, YouTube videos, or podcasts. It has been people discussing the merits of goals opposed to systems. Now, for me personally, I never paid much attention to it. It came across like just another thing for people that were looking for various life hacks. Now, it wasn't until I learned a little bit more about myself that I then took a deeper look into this and realized that this could be something that would be a difference maker in my personal and my professional life. And I do have to admit, in the places in which my life that I have been able to implement it, it has been a difference maker, and it does make me kind of look at everything a little bit differently. So let's talk about systems and not results. So most of us here have experienced burnout. I know I've had my fair share over time, but conversely for me personally, I feel like over recent years, I've been feeling more and more consistent burnout over time. But looking back, I realized that I was constantly and still am always just setting more and more goals. And in doing so, I'm setting myself up to feel like I'm failing more and more, which then begins a cycle of beating myself up and then trying to push harder and then not giving myself the balance that I need, which once again will lead to burnout. Then I heard this idea, probably from James Clear or maybe from a podcast, and it says that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And I might have felt a bit attacked because I am a perfectionist by nature. I can make a whole separate video on that, but I've definitely been the type of person to obsess over results, be it views, engagement, or any other type of metrics. And then in turn, completely ignore the daily rhythms and or rituals that will actually create real momentum. Now, don't get me wrong, I believe that goals are great, but they're outcome focused and they're future focused. And I understand if this applies to your job, then you do need to be goal oriented because your job and your livelihood is going to be on the line. But I will also argue that systems live in the now, and those same systems can help you work and excel in those settings as well. And for me, as someone with, let's say, ADHD tendencies, to say the least, systems can create clarity, repetition, and freedom. Otherwise, we run the risk of chasing 10 things at once, which can give the illusion of tons of progress, but in the end often yield very few high-quality finished results. So I began to shift. It was no longer, I want to have a finished script by this date. Instead, it became, I will dedicate 60 minutes to writing every day during the week. No longer was it, I want to get in the best shape of my life by summer, or next summer really. But instead it became, I will commit to doing these specific routines X amount of days per week, every week. And in a short amount of time, in the last 3 to 6 months respectively to each of those goals, I've been able to see more progress than I've seen relatively in the past 10 years over the same amount of time in any of those endeavors that I've tried to accomplish. One thing that I've learned about myself is that once I can set a pattern or a system that I'm satisfied with in that area of my life, I can then turn my conscious brain off in that area of my life. This in turn allows me to go on autopilot in that aspect of my life and then redirect that extra mental energy into another task or another facet of my life. And then instead of not feeling like I'm doing enough when I'm focusing on the end result of that goal and hyper fixating every day on the progress that I've made, I can then just focus on the system and doing the work. And then I can look up over time and realize how close I am to, if not look up and realize that I have already accomplished that goal. For me, it's more about how much I can limit the multiple directions that I'm putting my mental energy to so I can then focus that energy on bigger tasks and be more successful on those while still working within the systems in those goals and the smaller ones. But also, while working on some of the smaller goals, I can do those on autopilot and not think about them. And then the things that I need to be present on, whether it's going to be client projects or it's going to be YouTube or it's working on a film, I can then direct my conscious mental energy to that so I can be present when I'm collaborating with others. So I used to think that systems were limiting, and I get it. Sometimes they can be, especially if somebody is setting a system for you, which is why I think it's important to find and or build systems that work best for you. And ironically, it's the lack of systems that would and still sometimes make things feel harder, because as a neurodivergent, it is easy to still fall into these same habits again and again. But having the proper system and or structures allows me to be more present on the things that require my mental energy in that moment. And it often solves sometimes what is the hardest thing for us is figuring out how to get started. If you have a system, you always know what the first step is. And the more that you take that first step, the more it becomes second nature and a habit. And it's easier to fall in line with creating that new pattern, which will get you to your result through your systems. But that's all I have on this. I know I'm no expert on this. I'm just sharing from my perspective, something that's helped me. Let me know your thoughts, your comments, your questions, what I got wrong, what we can build on in this conversation in the comments below. And I will see you all in the next video.